where we're stepping back in time to 19th century China to uncover the story of John Robert Morrison. You might be thinking, another historical figure. But trust me, this is anything but your average history lesson. We're talking about a man who found himself at the heart of international intrigue, cultural exchange during a pivotal moment, and yes, even a little bit of family drama.
He's one of those figures who keeps appearing in the history books of this era, always playing a critical role, yet often overlooked. Time to give John Robert Morrison his due, don't you think?
Absolutely. So, to set the stage, John Robert is born in Macau in 1814, and get this, his dad is the Robert Morrison, the first Protestant missionary to China. Talk about being born into a legacy.
Not just any legacy, imagine the childhood this created. Growing up between England and Macau, he was immersed in both cultures from a very young age. This unusual upbringing had a direct impact on the unique perspective and skills he would later develop.
Right. I can't imagine those were your typical language classes. His dad was a pioneer in Chinese translation, so we're talking about learning from the best of the best. And then there's the detail about him attending the Anglo-Chinese college his father founded. Talk about family tradition.
It's fascinating how much of his future success can be traced back to those early years. He wasn't just learning vocabulary and grammar. He was gaining a deep, intuitive understanding of two very different cultures, almost by osmosis.
Okay, so this guy is practically fluent in Chinese by the time most kids are figuring out algebra. What happens next? Does he become some kind of scholar burying himself in ancient texts?
Not exactly. Remember, we're talking about a period of booming trade between China and the West. His sought-after language skills suddenly found themselves in very high demand.
So instead of dusty libraries, he's thrust into the world of business negotiations and diplomatic missions.
Precisely. At the age of 16, just let that sink in for a moment. He's already working for British traders in Guangzhou, translating, negotiating, and basically acting as a cultural bridge in this high-stakes world of international trade.
Wow, 16 years old and already the key to unlocking trade secrets in one of the world's most influential economies. That's a lot of pressure. What exactly was he doing for these traders day to day?
Think of him as the ultimate cultural interpreter. He wasn't just translating words, he was translating meaning. He helped the British traders understand the intricacies of Chinese business practices, navigate social customs, and ultimately close deals in a world where a single cultural misstep could mean disaster. This was long before the days of Google Translate, my friend. His expertise was gold.
It's like he was born for this role, thrown into the deep end of cultural exchange. I bet those traders were paying a small fortune for his skills.
You're right to assume that. The historical records tell us he was earning a handsome annual salary of 1,200 yuan, a significant sum for the time. But his contributions extended far beyond just getting the words right.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit. What do you mean?
He wasn't simply a middleman, he was an essential bridge builder. He possessed this intuitive sense of cultural nuance, the unspoken rules, the subtle gestures that can mean the difference between a successful negotiation and a complete breakdown in communication.
You've got to have some serious cultural intelligence to navigate that world, especially at such a young age. And he was publishing important work even then, right? Not just whispering translations in Soki backrooms.
Absolutely. He was instrumental in producing vital publications like the Anglo-Chinese Calendar and a Chinese commercial guide, providing invaluable resources for anyone involved in trade between China and the West.
Talk about shaping the narrative. These weren't just niche publications. They were shaping the way the West understood China. So they've got this young prodigy, fluent in both Chinese and the world of international trade, publishing influential guides. But this is just the beginning, isn't it?
You're reading my notes. As we delve deeper into John Robert's story, we'll see how those early experiences, that unique upbringing, become even more crucial as his life takes a dramatic turn. Remember how we talked about his father's legacy? Well, in 1834, Robert Morrison passes away.
Oh, wow. That must have been a tremendous loss, both personally and professionally. What happened next?
Indeed. Robert Morrison wasn't just a missionary and translator. He held the very important position of Chinese secretary and translator for the superintendent of British trade in China.
So did young John Robert step directly into his father's shoes, inheriting this legacy at such a young age?
He did. Despite being just 20 years old at the time, John Robert inherited his father's position. And this is where his story becomes intertwined with one of the most turbulent periods in Chinese history.
This is where we find John Robert right on the precipice of the First Opium War, a dark and complex period, to say the least. What role does he play as these global forces collide?
John Robert's deep understanding of both Chinese and British perspectives thrust him onto the world stage. He became the lead translator during the negotiations for the Treaty of Nanking, which aimed to bring an end to the First Opium War in 1842.
Wow, imagine being in that room, the weight of two nations on your shoulders, trying to find common ground after such a devastating conflict. What a heavy burden for such a young man.
Absolutely. And remember, he wasn't just deciphering vocabulary. He was navigating cultural landmines, those subtle nuances of language and custom that could make or break a peace agreement. His fluency wasn't just about words. It was about understanding the soul of two very different cultures.
It's like he was born and raised to be the essential man in this situation, the one person who could bridge the divide. What strikes me is that he was more than just a translator. He was a cultural advisor, a diplomat in his own right.
Precisely. John Robert's deep understanding of both Chinese and British perspectives made him an invaluable intermediary. The sources highlight how much the British officials relied on his judgment and cultural insight. His role in shaping the Treaty of Nanking, a document that would have lasting consequences, is a real testament to his skills and influence.
It's a tragedy, then, that the Treaty of Nanking ended up being so one-sided, imposing such harsh terms on China.
It is a complex and controversial legacy, for sure. But it's important to remember that John Robert was navigating a very volatile situation, trying to build even a fragile bridge after a devastating war. And the story doesn't end with the treaty. John Robert's expertise would be called upon for many other crucial projects during this tumultuous period.
So, beyond the Treaty of Nanking, where else do we see his skills put to the test? What other challenges did he take on?
Well, consider this. John Robert was instrumental in opening the West River trade route from Macau to Guangzhou. This wasn't just about plotting a course on a map. It was about creating a pathway through a complex cultural landscape.
I can only imagine the kind of cultural understanding that took, the potential pitfalls he had to anticipate and navigate. This wasn't just about ships and cargo, was it?
Not at all. Opening up a major trade route meant balancing the commercial interests of the West with the customs, traditions, and sensitivities of the local populations. His success speaks volumes about his ability to forge understanding and build those crucial connections between East and West.
And let's not forget about his family's legacy in all of this. He didn't turn his back on his father's missionary work, did he?
Not at all. John Robert continued to support Chinese Christians even as they faced persecution. In fact, he played a significant role in revising the Chinese translation of the Bible, ensuring its accuracy and accessibility for a growing Chinese Christian population.
Talk about a multifaceted career, navigating international treaties, opening up trade routes, supporting religious communities. It's remarkable to think he achieved so much in such a short span of time.
It really is.
Yeah.
He seemed to possess an innate ability to move between worlds, to understand and appreciate different perspectives. And perhaps that's the heart of his legacy.
It's both inspiring and incredibly humbling, isn't it, to think that someone could have such a profound impact on the world stage at such a young age.
It is. And it makes his untimely death at the age of 29 due to malaria all the more tragic. It makes you wonder what else he could have accomplished, what other bridges he could have built had he been given more time.
It's a poignant reminder that even a life cut short can leave a lasting legacy. It's easy to focus on the grand narratives of history, the emperors and generals. But here we have John Robert Morrison working tirelessly behind the scenes, shaping the course of events through his dedication to understanding and bridging cultures.
And that dedication wasn't limited to diplomacy and trade. As we'll see, he also had a profound impact on the future of education, further solidifying his legacy as a true cultural trailblazer.
So we've covered John Robert Morrison's impact on diplomacy, trade, and even religion. But there's another fascinating thread in his story that we haven't touched on yet. His passion for education, particularly his vision for the future of the Anglo-Chinese College.
It really highlights his dedication to fostering cross-cultural understanding. Remember, this college, founded by his father, it's where John Robert's own incredible journey began, and by the 1840s, he saw a unique opportunity to magnify that impact.
Okay, so set the scene for me. What was John Robert envisioning for the college's future?
Well, at the time, the Anglo-Chinese College was in Malacca, but Hong Kong was rapidly emerging as this vibrant hub for East-West exchange, and John Robert, being the visionary that he was, saw the potential in moving the college right into the heart of it all.
He was thinking strategically, wasn't he? Positioning the school to become a global center for cross-cultural learning.
Absolutely. He believed that relocating to Hong Kong would attract a wider range of students, scholars, and resources, creating a dynamic melting pot for knowledge sharing and deeper understanding between China and the West. And here's the fascinating part. It worked.
Wait, are you saying John Robert Morrison's vision directly shaped the future of the Anglo-Chinese College?
The historical records certainly seem to suggest that his advocacy played a key role in the college's relocation to Hong Kong in 1843. And over time, it eventually evolved into what we know today as the University of Hong Kong.
Wow, talk about a lasting legacy. It's amazing to think that a global institution like Hong Kong University has its roots in this vision of cross-cultural education, all stemming back to John Robert Morrison.
It really makes you think about the ripple effect of one person's commitment to bridging cultures.
Yeah.
Right? It underscores the power of education as a force for greater understanding and connection in our world.
It's truly humbling to consider everything John Robert accomplished in his short but incredibly impactful life. Diplomacy, trade, religion, education, he left his mark on them all.
It's a reminder that history isn't just made by emperors and generals, but by individuals like John Robert Morrison, working often behind the scenes to shape a better future.
His story is a testament to the power of cultural understanding, a lesson that feels more timely than ever. And it leaves us with a lot to think about. What can we learn from John Robert Morrison's life? How can we each use our own unique skills and passions to foster understanding and connection in an increasingly interconnected world?
Perhaps his story inspires us to be a little more curious, a little more open to embracing different perspectives, and ultimately to become bridge builders in our own right.
It's a powerful thought to end on, John. Robert Morrison may not be a household name, but his life and legacy hold timeless lessons about the power of cross-cultural understanding and the impact one person can have on the world.